All right. Well, tonight we have Miss Karyn Dolan on our as a guest tonight. She is the host of her own radio show called Through the Keyhole. She's also done just a lot of different things in the UFO and paranormal arena. She's been a speaker at many different conferences, and it's going to be interesting to talk to her about some topics that she has presented on, especially how the media portrays ETs, the UFO phenomenon, that whole thing. So looking forward to talking to her. Since we are running a little late, I'm going to go ahead and get her on the line right now so that we can have as much time with her as possible.
Hello.
Hi, Karyn.
Yes.
Rick Scouler from Topic UFO. We're live on the air.
Cool.
So how are you doing tonight, Karyn? We had a little bit of technical issue. For some reason, live stream has taken my camera feed and done like this super close-up of me. I don't know why, because that's not how the camera is seeing it. So It's always something with live stream, I'll tell you. But starting tonight, what I've done is I'm actually shooting with two cameras, a standard 16:9 camera to broadcast the show, and then I also have a full high-def camera, which is making its own local recording, and that's what I use to go into post-editing, and that's what I use to put out on the web, because that's where we get the most of our traffic, is from video on demand. So.
Okay.
But anyway, so that's that. I appreciate you taking the time to talk with us tonight.
Well, thank you for asking me.
Well, no problem. I was, after I read your bio, I was amazed at how much you've done in like 5 years. You just started and went full bore on this thing, it looks like.
Kind of hit the ground running, I guess. Yeah.
That's what I would.
Well, it's a field that is so fascinating. And when you get into it, it's easy to get sucked in really quickly.
That's exactly what happened to me. I personally was not a UFO paranormal person until just 2-3 years ago. And once you get bit by the bug, it is really hard to put it down.
It is. It really is.
So, Karyn, per your bio here, as we've stated it, your career portion of UFO paranormal seems to have started in 2007. Was there something previous to that? Did you have any experiences, or what happened to lead up to this 2007?
Well, my whole life I had been interested in paranormal topics. I certainly never thought about UFOs until much later. Probably into the 1990s was the first time I ever even really heard anything about UFOs.
Mm-hmm.
Once I did, then I kind of started picking up books and got pulled into that really quickly as well. The thing that really did it was actually my husband wrote his book.
Now, that's Dolan. What I was going to ask you. Are you any relationship to Richard Dolan?
I am. Yes, I am married to him.
Oh, it just hit me today. It just dawned on me. I had.
Well, and here I thought it was funny that all this time you hadn't mentioned him, because usually, I get a lot more mention, so what's it like to be married to Rich Dolan, or, a lot of questions about him.
Well, we're not going to talk about him tonight. How do you like that?
But at any rate, that really is, what got me into UFOs. Because my whole life I'd been interested in a good ghost story, that kind of thing. I was always fascinated by it. And in the 90s, he got into UFOs, which I guess he'd always been interested in, but he hadn't really talked about it much to me till he finished his book in the year 2000, and then he started being invited to speak at UFO conferences. I came along with him kind of to see what all this was about, and I was reading the books that he had in the house to do his research to write his book.
Oh.
I got gripped too. And then I got a chance to go to the conferences just, to help out, and met all these fascinating people, and I started listening to the presentations and taking notes and asking questions, and pretty soon I was just as much into it as he was.
There must be a crazy household at your house.
It's fun. I mean, our two kids are a really interesting house. There was a time when they both would kind of ask us, Mom, I would like to have my friends over. Could we not talk about UFOs, please? They're like, we should pretend we're normal for a little while. And we're like, okay, yeah, we'll do our best. I don't know.
I mean, I can remember as a teenager, doing the same type of thing, but it wasn't about UFOs. It was like, Mom and Dad's, don't talk about this or that, but not UFOs.
Well, see, the really funny thing, though, is we said, yes, absolutely, I understand kids don't want to be different from their friends. That's totally fine. We played it cool. We were totally just played up our normal things. I have a day job. I work in a medical office, and Rich, aside from writing books and writing articles on UFOs, he also writes resumes.
Oh.
So we said, okay, he writes resumes, and I work in an office, and everything's cool. Well, somehow it got out. The kids' friends came over, and they were in another room, and pretty soon they're running in, and our daughter is saying, Mom, my friends want to hear about your radio show. And I'm like, really? Well, tell them if you want me to.
Yeah, no problem.
Well, they really want to hear. Yeah, so their friends all thought it was cool, and now we're like, one of the cool houses on the block. The kids all want to come here, so.
I bet. So, I take it, though, you've never had any direct UFO sighting, or you've never actually experienced any paranormal activity?
As far as paranormal activity, little things that really can't be conclusive, but I suspect everyone in the world has little tiny experiences that.
Right.
A lot of, like you see somebody and you think, oh, I just saw so-and-so and said hello, I haven't seen them in a while, and then later you find out that person had died the day before. But what if you had found out? You'd never know.
Exactly.
Things like little, maybe odd things that aren't even really interesting stories. I did actually have a UFO experience. It's a little bit strange talking about it because I haven't talked about it very much. I had an experience when I was a kid, and I didn't realize until many, many years later, after I was talking to Rich about it, after his book came out, in fact, he told me that he thought this experience that I had described to him was UFO related, but he had never said anything to me because he didn't want to scare me. But yeah, I did have an experience when I was about 11.
Can you talk about it, or would you rather not? Or
yeah. I woke up in my bed at night, and there was somebody in the room. There were 3 somebodies in the room.
Wow.
And I couldn't see them clearly. They were kind of silhouetted against the light. We had a light on in the hallway, but it was dark in my room, so I couldn't really see anything other than that there were shapes. There were figures. And I would try to close my eyes. I thought, oh, I'm dreaming. I must be dreaming. I was scared. I was reading ghost stories all the time, and I'm thinking, oh, okay, I must have been...
Imagination.
Exactly. It has to be a nightmare. And I tell myself when I open my eyes, they won't be there because they're not real. I'm just dreaming. And I'd open my eyes, and they're still there.
Now,
and this happened a lot. It happened many times.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
And,
well, I mean, on that one night, I kept doing it and looking again, and they're still there. And then finally I looked, and there was nothing there, and I thought, okay, good. it was a dream. It's all over. Fine. Managed to get to sleep, and when I woke up in the morning, I thought, wow, what a dream. And I looked down at my arm, and there was like a triangle mark on my arm.
Wow.
Which I didn't know at the time. Of course, when I told Rich, he's thinking, holy crap, this is classic. I mean,
yes.
That's classic abduction stuff.
Have you ever had it x-rayed?
No, it was like pinpricks. It was a 1-inch perfect equilateral triangle on the inside of my right arm. And it looked like pinpricks or insect bites. And I remember sitting up on my bed for a good 15 minutes trying to convince myself that mark had been there when I went to bed the night before. And I know it wasn't.
How old were you? I'm sorry. How old were you at this?
I was 11.
Wow, do you ever think that there may be some connection between that and you end up marrying somebody that, writes a book about this? And
Yeah, No, I don't think things happen in a vacuum. I think things happen this way for a reason. Maybe that's why he married me. Maybe that's why he wrote the book. I don't know.
Very, very, very strange.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for sharing that with us. I myself, I have never really experienced any paranormal activity that I know of. I think I saw a UFO one time back in the late 70s, but I've never had anything real pronounced. And but even with that said, the UFO and paranormal topics, I just find them fascinating because once you get past the hype and all the negative stuff, and you actually start meeting these people and really talking to them, it's hard not to believe in it. It really is.
And when you say talking to these people, who are you referring to?
Well, I'm talking, people that have experienced these things firsthand.
Okay.
It seems to me like, and we'll get into this because I think you actually did a presentation on this, but, the media, I think, has brainwashed the human race so much in regards to both paranormal and UFO. If you went just by that, you would have a very, very skewed opinion on these topics. And it's not until you really go investigate yourself and look at this information and read it and meet people that you really get the real feeling of what's going on. Just my personal opinion.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. That's definitely true. And you know what I don't understand, and I'd be curious to know if you have an insight on this, is why Hollywood feels the need to change all of this information to, quote, make a good story or make a good movie. And I'm thinking the reality of these things, if you look at any real cases, I mean, what, these aren't scary enough? They're not interesting enough?
Hollywood, I think, plays us as being a little less intelligent than we are. They dumb things down to get the best cross section of people. They definitely cater to the 18 to 25-year-olds. It's just a fact. And the thing is, if you really know something about these topics, then yes, watching this thing unedited, if you say, would be just fine. Mm-hmm. But if you don't know anything about it, perhaps without them embellishing it, it would be boring to some people or something. I don't know. But definitely...
Maybe, I don't know. But I just, there are some TV shows and movies that I've seen, and I usually check things out. I don't generally expect to be entertained by a lot of them. But I'm always curious to know when a new movie comes out, oh, how did they deal with the topic this time? That's generally what I'm looking for. The Paranormal Activity movies, I loved the first one. And I thought the second one was pretty good, too. My personal opinion is I enjoyed those.
Yes. They were very scary.
They were. But I thought they were fairly accurate, too. They really seemed like they started off with kind of low-grade poltergeist activity, something that's been pretty impersonal, and then it kind of became personal, and it intensified, and then it started to focus on one person. And then it became kind of scary and threatening. And it just seemed like that's how things really happen.
Right, and they have to condense that into 90 minutes, this story that may have taken weeks or months.
Exactly. I thought they did a really good job portraying that. It started off with little things that maybe nobody noticed. The camera happened to catch, so the audience gets to see it, family members didn't. Or they could kind of blow it off, say, oh, I could have sworn I put that pan down on the counter instead of on the table, but I guess I forgot.
Right.
Little things. But then it escalates into things that you can't deny. Now, there was another movie recently called Fourth Kind. You probably saw that one.
I haven't, but I've heard people talk about it, and they've been very positive about it. What was your take on it?
It's supposed to be a movie about alien abduction, and I did not like it at all because it didn't. It struck me as something that was more consistent with stories about demonic possession in abduction.
Well, it's funny you say that. We had a guest on a few weeks ago that discussed the connection between alienology, angelology, and demonology. And there are a lot of people out there that feel that at least the UFO phenomenon is demonic.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's a whole group, subset, microcosm of people that feel that's where that comes from. It usually comes from a religious slant, of course. The people that I've talked to about that believe that tend to be religious people.
I've heard this idea that abductions are done by demons, not by aliens. And there's a Christian group that was presenting in Roswell actually a few years ago, one of the years that I was there. I participated in a panel discussion with some of the people who were talking about this whole idea that what are called alien abductions are actually being done by these demons. And not only that, but that if you become conscious and kind of realize what's happening in the middle of an abduction experience, they said you can stop it by calling on Jesus for help.
Yes.
Now, I was on this panel along with Farah Yurdozu, who is Turkish, and she pointed out she's not Christian. She's Muslim. She grew up in Turkey. And she said, so what does that mean to me? Like, if I were to come to in the middle of an abduction experience, I wouldn't think to call on Jesus because I'm not Christian. So do I just get what's coming to me? What is that? And, I mean, I was brought up as a Christian, but I'm actually pagan. I consider myself a practicing Wiccan. So I'm not sure that I would think to call on Jesus either. Although if I was scared enough, I might go back to my childhood, being brought up Roman Catholic, and I might think of it.
Help me, Jesus, right?
Yeah, no kidding. But, one of the people, and I don't remember the gentleman's name, but one of the men on the panel said that he knew of only one case where it hadn't worked, and that was because the person in question was so frightened that they were not able to articulate out loud calling on Jesus for help. And I'm thinking, okay, you lost me right there, because I did grow up going to church in the Roman Catholic religion, and I do not believe in a Jesus who would not come help someone who is too terrified to call out loud. I mean, the reason you can't make that voice work is You're so frightened. But is he going to stand there going, I don't hear you. I don't hear you saying please. No. I'm sorry. I mean, if you believe in Jesus, he's going to help you just if you're afraid and you mentally call on him, I believe.
I would agree. I would agree. And Karyn, you know, I have been doing this show now since January of this year, so very short time. I'm extremely new to all of this. But one thing that has just enveloped me is the fact that when it comes to the UFO and paranormal topics, there are just so many different viewpoints. Most of them are based on what people are outside of the topic. So if they're Christian, they're going to have a certain outlook, certain belief towards this. If they're non-religious, they may have more of a scientific. And, you know, I don't have a problem with that, but I think it's a problem for the overall, you know, trying to solve this riddle because, you know, we have so many people going in so many directions. How are we ever going to get to the real truth?
Exactly. And then the phenomenon itself is not reproducible, and it sometimes seems consciously to take certain delight in, you know, behaving differently for different people.
Exactly.
There's a real trickster element here, and you have to wonder how conscious this stuff is, and how much, even if it's not conscious, how much is it affected by the energy of the different researchers? Because this whole energy field that's what we're studying. You know, we're trying to look into ghosts and say, what are they? Why do some people come back or linger and others don't? Well, it's their personal energy that we're talking about. And you know, is there something physical that makes it stay in certain places? There is some indication that there are certain things like stone and water that do kind of hold on to it.
Now, but when you talk about energy and, you know, different types of energy, are you speaking negative and positive types of energy, or?
No, I'm thinking more like etheric energy, life energy, soul, whatever you want to call it. And that's another problem. There's no common terminology.
Yep.
Everybody uses whatever terms feel right to them, and that's great until you get two research groups trying to talk to each other.
Yeah, we have it. It's a topic that just has no standards, you know, standard based.
Right.
And, you know, that's going to slow us down big time,
Yeah.
I think. And, you know, I was thinking today, even if the U.S. government were to break into television broadcast tonight and say, ladies and gentlemen, we need to tell you that we are not alone and, you know, UFOs are real. That's just going to start a whole nother topic of discussion because, number one, some people aren't going to believe it. And then they're all going to have their viewpoints on, are these entities malevolent or benevolent? You know, it's just going to continue on and on. I don't know where it will stop.
You know what I always think, first thing that's going to happen when our government actually admits that, yes, UFOs are real, they are craft piloted by beings that are not from Earth. Yes, they're here. They've been here for a long time. We've known about it. Question one that's going to come up is, then what about abductions? Do you mean to tell us that you knew they've been here and you knew they've been taking people and doing things to them and you haven't done a thing to stop it? Or you can't stop it?
Right.
I mean, our whole government structure just lost all its power right there.
Yep.
Because why should any of those people be in their office if they can't protect us?
Exactly. Exactly. And I think that's probably one of the reasons that they haven't told us.
Exactly. And I don't think disclosure is going to happen from the human side. I think it's going to happen when whoever's flying those things decides, you know, they've come close with appearing over Chicago O'Hare and appearing over Stevensville. And I think they're making themselves very, very visible. And at some point, they're actually going to come out and say, here we are.
Right.
And we're not going to be able to deny it anymore.
I totally agree with you. I think, I had Stephen Bassett on the show a few weeks back, and he was discussing this Disclosure Project 2. Although it would be nice if the government were to come out and tell us, like I say, I still think a lot of people probably wouldn't believe it, and I don't think they would tell us the whole truth. They'd give it to us in bits and pieces,
Yeah.
And I think they're doing that now.
I was just going to say, do you wonder if they're already doing that? I mean, every time a new movie comes out, it's fourth time, a major blockbuster movie about alien abduction, and treating it in a relatively serious way. I mean, I felt like they got a lot wrong, which I thought was significant, too. Like, it's okay to talk about alien abduction, but you can't really tell the truth about it. You can only talk about it as long as you get it wrong.
Exactly. But there's so much, excuse me, over the last 5 to 7 years or so, the amount of UFO and paranormal shows on TV has just grown tremendously.
Yeah. And they're becoming more serious. They're being taken more seriously. I mean, look at Ancient Aliens.
Right.
That is phenomenal. I mean, it's a beautifully produced program. It's brilliant. The writing is fantastic. The things they talk about, they really open the mind to it. It's really just saying, look, there is so much more in the world than what we know about. Isn't this fantastic? Isn't it amazing? It opens you right up to, oh my gosh, what else is out there? I want to learn about what's out there.
Exactly. Karyn, I cannot believe that anyone could watch that show 3 or 4 times and not be compelled to learn more. You would have to be a really lazy person to not want to know more.
I know. I mean, they present such good cases. And, okay, they do say, well, yeah, I think aliens must have built these things because, no humans. You could always say, yeah. Okay. But still, there's this amazing photography of these beautiful places. And, yeah, Baalbek, these huge, freaking giant pieces of rock, which we still can't figure out how to move.
Right.
And, if you actually want to look at fact and look at evidence, you cannot believe that, for example, the pyramids in Egypt were built by, I don't care how many hundreds of thousands of slaves dragging big blocks of stone with rope on logs.
Right.
In a place that didn't grow that many trees to begin with. Where did they get all those logs? Come on. I mean, as soon as you start to look at it, it falls apart. Where did they get that much rope? Where did they get all those logs? And how did all those people pull on one big block of stone without stepping on each other? Where did they step when they were pulling it up the hill? You can't do it.
And then once you got it to site, how did you get it up the pyramid?
Yeah.
It's just inconceivable.
It's so easy to say, oh, yeah, it was, people pulled them with logs and rollers until you actually try to do it. And that's what they did on Ancient Aliens. They talked with modern engineers and said, well, what if? Can it be done this way?
Right.
And these guys who move stones for a living said no. And some of them said, with today's modern machinery, I couldn't do what they did. I don't know how they did it.
It would take a lifetime to do some of those carvings, they said,
Yeah. And then move those giant blocks of stone, they said, maybe with some of today's modern equipment, but you know what? I couldn't put it on the sand where these things were put because the modern equipment is too heavy. It would get bogged down in the sand. I couldn't use it there.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, just where does that leave us? You can't, even with the equipment we have now, which is the best we can come up with, it wouldn't be usable in that setting.
Right. No, it doesn't make sense. And the pyramid shape of construction is found, which I didn't know until I watched Ancient Aliens, this pyramid shape is found all over the world.
Yeah.
And
they've really brought that out to audiences all over the world, that, this is widespread. This is all over.
And at the time they were built, these people were separated to the point, where they could not have talked to each other or exchanged ideas on building concepts. How did all of them come up with this pyramid design on their own?
Yeah.
That's a gamble right there.
Yeah.
Well, let's listen, Karyn. I want to talk a little bit, if you don't mind. I want to go to this 2007. This is when you did I take it, your first presentation, and it was in Roswell, actually, huh?
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. The 60th anniversary in Roswell. What a way to start.
Yeah, exactly. Can you talk to us a little bit about that? How did that come about, number one, and then exactly what you talked about?
Well, the way it came about actually was that a friend of ours from Roswell, Guy Malone, had a radio show at that time called Live from Roswell, and that was on the Paranormal Radio Network. And he called us up one day, and I remember answering the phone, and I said, "Oh, Guy, you want to talk about the radio? Here, let me get rich for you." And he said, "No, I actually want to ask you to come on." And I said, "Wait, what? No, you want rich?" And he said, "No." He says, "Everybody talks to UFO researchers." But he said, "I want to talk to you about what it's like to live with somebody who does this." And I thought, well, that sounds kind of cool, but are you sure anybody's going to want to hear what I have to say? He said, "Yeah, it'll be great. Well, it'll be fine." So I said, "Okay." Well, Guy and I were friends, so I thought, if nothing else, I'll have a nice chat with Guy, and hopefully I won't send his show into the tank, and it'll be done, and it'll be fine. So we talked about it, and I can't remember really what we actually discussed, but we had a blast. We had a really good time just chatting about, my first impressions of the UFO conferences, I guess, and what I thought of some of the ideas that were presented there, and some of the people I had met, and just, it was fascinating, and I had a really great time talking about it. And during our conversation, I said something about these kids' TV shows that I was seeing, because at that time our two children were toddlers, so they're home watching Sesame Street and all these other, little kids shows on the PBS channels. And at the same time, Rich was writing his books. He had just finished his first book. He was working on another one, and we had UFO books and books about abductions lying around the house. And we didn't worry about putting them away that much because the kids were so little, they weren't reading.
Yeah, right.
But I said, at night I read these books on alien abductions, and in the morning I'm watching Teletubbies and Booba, and all I can think is, how much the Teletubbies look like aliens. And I said, I always thought, I've been trying to get Rich to do a presentation on this, and he kept saying, "No, I got other things I'm talking about. No, I'm doing this, I'm doing this." And Guy said, "Well, why don't you do it?" And I thought, yeah, maybe I should. And he said, "Tell you what, I'm working on the Roswell UFO Festival Committee this year, and I'm looking for speakers. Why don't you come to Roswell and do it?" So I'm on the radio, and I'm like, okay.
Nothing like putting you on the spot. Yeah.
Well, yeah, but it was a good thing he did, because, I have always been really, really shy. And if I'd had an out, I would never have done that. So, he put me on the spot. He said, "It's great. You're helping me out because I need to find speakers. It'll be fun. Sounds like a good idea. Let's just do it." I said, "Okay, fine." The absolute worst that can happen is I'll be embarrassed.
Exactly.
But I'll also go to Roswell. Yeah.
Yeah, you got to go to Roswell, and
yeah.
So
and,
this was this your first time presenting to a group of people like that?
Yes.
Wow.
Standing up in front of a room full of people talking about how Teletubbies look like aliens. That was
Oh my Lord.
Yeah, and I'm thinking, nobody here knows who I am. I'm this total nobody to the field. I'm this person who's been like walking around in the background, staying in the back of the room, listening to all the presentations and everything. I never even talked, socially to people at the first few conferences I went to because I'm just so ridiculously shy, and I didn't know anything, so I didn't want to say anything because I didn't want to sound stupid. So I just sat there and listened, like everything, and I read and I listened to other people's conversations and just soaked up as much as I could. And the presentation actually ended up going very well. When I was done, a lot of people came up and said it was really interesting. It was stuff they'd never thought about before. And quite a few people also came up to me and said, oh, have you seen this TV show? Have you seen this cartoon? Did you ever see this? You should include this one next time. And I thought, wow, next time. Yeah, and I'm like writing down all these names that people gave me. And I was asked to come back to Roswell again the next year, and I had probably twice as much material to put into it because of all those people who had come up and referred, given me other cartoons and other kids' shows. And I was just focusing on kids' TV shows. That's a very narrow field. I wasn't really talking much about movies or anything aimed at adults. It was all, how is the U.S. government presenting the topic of UFOs and aliens to small children in TV shows.
So now, do you feel that there is an actual connection,
Yeah.
or is it's being done purposely to get our kids comfortable with it, or what was your final summation of the issue there?
Well, I did find evidence that following the 1947 incident in Roswell, in which something crashed, which was alleged to be a UFO, a craft from a place other than Earth, and I think it absolutely was, mainly because of the reactions of the local military. Stan Friedman said they want to say it was a weather balloon. Their recovery operation was not at all what was standard for a weather balloon.
Exactly.
Weather balloons go out with a phone number on them, and, if this comes down on your yard, call this number, and, maybe when we get a chance, we'll swing over in a Jeep and pick it up. And this was this was intense. They had people searching individuals' homes, looking in the sugar bowls to see if they'd hidden pieces of the wreckage, doing shoulder-to-shoulder searches, walking across huge areas, looking for every single scrap of wreckage. This was not a weather balloon. There was no way.
No.
And if it was something other than a craft from elsewhere, why would they say it was a weather balloon? They need a cover story. I'm not buying it.
Now,
and
go ahead.
We'll accept maybe it was secret technology that the U.S. was working on, and we were just coming out of World War II, and we needed to keep it secret. Okay, fair enough. It's 60 years later now. How come we're not using whatever that technology was in the Middle East? I mean, we could use it. And 60 years ago, whatever was secret, cutting-edge technology 60 years ago should already have been used and discarded by now.
Yes, many times over.
Yeah, and we still don't know what it was. So, no, I'm not buying that either.
So now back to these kids shows. So you were saying starting in 1947, after Roswell.
Right. So after that, yes, when that came up, now the military has something. I mean, they're looking at it thinking, holy crap, this is proof of life elsewhere.
Yep.
That has come here. And people know about it, because individuals in Roswell know about it. And there was a newspaper story before anyone got a chance to catch it. So this went out. So they're thinking, okay, what are we going to do? How do we control this? Because they don't want to panic. They don't want citizens. I can't believe how stupid they all think we are. But, yes, a lot of people would panic. They want to maintain control. Totally fine. I understand that. So the Robertson panel was convened by the CIA to study the question of UFOs, whether or not they constitute a threat to public safety and national security, and what we can do about controlling public opinion of them. Not are we for or against them, but what do we think? Are we afraid of them? Are we terrified? If we hear about them, are we going to be so many people calling the Air Force that we're going to block the phone lines so that all of a sudden the Ruskies can drop a bomb on us and we won't be able to do anything. That's ostensibly what they were saying.
Mm-hmm.
In 1953, they did come out with their report in which they said, we don't think the UFOs themselves are a problem. They're not a threat. Not sure if I believe that that was a true statement about what they actually thought, but that's what it said. And they said, however, we do think that the topic could cause a panic because, of course, the general public doesn't know anything. And we do recommend using media to, put out what we want people to think about. And they mentioned specifically using movie companies, using, television was a new technology at that time, so they didn't really talk about TV much. But they did mention using the Walt Disney Company specifically by name.
Wow.
And, yeah, I was pretty blown away when I read that. It's right in the Robertson Panel report. And
is that available? Can people go out and download that?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, just Google it. Or you know what? It's probably on the Black Vault website where he's got, John Greenwald has all of these government documents out there and available. He has done so much over the years requesting things, Freedom of Information Act. He gets them, he puts them up on his website. Save everyone else trouble.
That's called Black Vault?
The Black Vault.
I'll have to check
Great
into
source.
that.
But, yeah, you can probably just Google Robertson Panel.
So now, have you continued to do research in how this media is portraying aliens, or do you just kind of follow it, through normal life, or?
Yeah. Well, lately I've been more just following it, although just recently I've been asked to speak at a couple more conferences, and I've been thinking about revisiting that topic and updating it because there are new movies and things out. The entertainment and media climate is really changing. Ancient Aliens is one really good example of how TV shows on this topic are now being taken more seriously. There isn't always that little snicker after you talk about UFOs.
Exactly.
That's such a huge achievement. And a couple of months ago, I had the opportunity to interview Giorgio Tsoukalos on my radio show, and that was one of the things we talked about quite a bit. I'm so impressed that he was able to get a mainstream network like the History Channel to air an out there program like Ancient Aliens, in which they say, alien races from aliens from someplace not on Earth came here and they built these things, and we don't understand how they did it. And they don't have skeptics undercutting everything they say on each episode, and they don't have somebody snickering about it on every episode.
But and then on the flip side, they don't jam it down your throat either.
Oh, they don't.
And
I watch it because the footage, the photography is amazing. Even if you don't agree with anything they're saying, it's just so beautiful.
Yeah.
Every image is so gorgeous, and you get to see footage from all over the world in these beautiful, amazing structures. And then you start thinking about how much bigger the world is than we ever thought it was. And I feel good when I watch that. I feel like I'm in touch with something larger than myself, and I love that.
Yeah, I feel the same way when I watch that show. I was so glad that it came back on for another season, and hopefully they'll keep going, because it is probably one of the most interesting shows on TV right now, as far as I'm concerned. And like you say, very well produced and written, so it's quality programming.
Absolutely. Everything about it, incredibly high quality. If you really nitpick and just say the photography is amazing, the lighting is amazing, the music is really wonderful to listen to, the writing, the recording, everything.
So Karyn, we're getting down here to about the last 10 minutes. So I thought if you could talk a little bit about your radio show And then anything that you have coming up this year that you're going to be involved with? Tell us about your radio show, Through the Keyhole.
Well, I have been hosting Through the Keyhole on the Paranormal Radio Network for 5 years now. I got started on that the same year, right after I did Guy Malone's show with him, because his ratings were so good. He told me later that his ratings spiked. And so he asked me to come back and do the show again, and then later he asked me to co-host with him. He was going to be at a conference, and he needed someone to kind of operate base camp for him. So, and he said every time I did that with him, he had a spike in ratings. So then finally his producer said, hey, I have another time slot. Do you want it?
Wow.
And again, I'm thinking, I've always been shy my whole life. This is so crazy. And then I thought, how am I ever going to get a chance like this again? So if I screw it up, I screw it up. But you know what? This is too much fun. So I just went with it.
And you've been doing it for 5 years now. How many shows is that? Are you on once a week, or?
I'm on once a week, but, you know, periodically, like if I go to a conference or something, then I don't do a new show generally. I probably ought to, but there's always so much going on at conferences. I usually try to schmooze with people, and I line up interviews to do later. But I generally don't do anything while I'm traveling.
So over these 5 years, could you pick the most interesting interview that you've done?
The single most interesting?
Yes.
Wow, that's a tough one. But I'll say one of the top has to be Lloyd Pye and the Star Child skull.
Yes.
And I personally, I love that skull, boy, because there is a piece of physical evidence. You get all these skeptics who say, well, you know, show me the physical evidence. Okay, here's a skull. You know, and it's real. It's not rubber. It's not fake. He has a rubber cast of it, so some people might be thinking, oh, I saw that skull and it was rubber. Yeah, he has a copy that he travels sometimes to protect the original. But the original one has been studied under electron microscopes, and it's had DNA testing done to it. That thing is organic, but it's weird. Cell structure is not normal.
No, it isn't. And Lloyd's assistant, Amy Vickers, did a show with me last month, and I was extremely fascinated by these filaments. I guess they are. They're almost like a carbon fiber or something that's woven into this bone of the skull.
Yeah, it's in the cell structure, and it makes the cell stronger.
Yeah, and it's not found anywhere else. It's never been seen before on any skull.
Exactly. And you know what? The debunkers, only thing they can say is, well, we don't know where that skull has been. Who cares? Look at it.
Yeah, what did it do? Did these...
It's not fake. It's just not normal. It's not human. And people try to say, oh, it's cradle-boarded. No, you compare that to a cradle-boarded skull, and there's a clear difference.
Right.
Cradle-boarded skulls are flat.
And then there's another disease. I forget what it's called.
Hydroencephaly?
Yeah, I guess where it's a lot of fluid on the brain.
Yeah.
Something like that. And even that they've been able to prove is not the case.
Right, because I mean that would make the head appear swollen. It would be large as it is. The problem is that when you examine the Star Child's skull, you can see that because the head is larger, and Lloyd explains this so much better, but he says, you know, if you look at where the balance has to be adjusted because of the additional bulging on one side or on the back of the head, you would have to move the center of gravity back. And when you look at the opening in it where the spine goes in, it's been adjusted. It's perfect.
Wow.
It's not a skull that has anything wrong with it. It's just not shaped like ours.
So what are your thoughts on that? Do you think that this was a hybrid of some sort, or do you think it was a full-blooded alien life form? Or
I don't know. I follow the DNA testing because I think it's fascinating. And I know that Lloyd will come out and say this is an alien skull. And I can understand why he does that. He's had it for so many years, and he's studied it in such depth, and he's talked to so many people. I mean, he's way past the whole point of questioning things.
Right.
But at the same time, I think he puts people off because there are people who can't get their mind around that.
Yeah.
That's unfortunate. You know, when I look at the skull, I think, I don't know if it's alien. I don't think it's human. I don't know what else. I mean, now I just said, what else can it be? If it's not human, I guess it must be alien. I'm still getting my brain around that. But the thing I love about it is that it is this physical object that nobody can deny exists. And I don't care how skeptical you are, you have to admit there's something there that's worth looking at.
Right. And what gets me is the skeptics, you know, they come up with some pretty stupid replies to this stuff. But,
Really?
I mean, don't they feel that it's worth investigating? I mean, I would think that the government would give Lloyd as much money as he needed to do all the tests required.
If they were really interested in finding out what's out there, yes, they would.
Yep.
But the whole hypothesis of many people who are in the UFO research field is that the government, and I realize by saying that I'm talking about this huge single entity, and there are a lot of people in the government. Some are in the know, some are not. Some believe in keeping things secret, some are really trying to work to bring this out. But the people who have the knowledge and are trying to keep it down, I mean, they know this. They don't want this stuff to come out because, as we talked about earlier, they're going to lose every bit of power and credibility that they've ever had.
Yep.
They're sitting pretty right now, and that's all going to fall right out from under them the minute this all comes out. And we all know. Not only that we know the truth, but then we have proof that they've been lying to us all this time.
Yeah, I truly believe that it could really be a breakdown of modern society. Not just the fact that these things exist, but the fact that, our governments and our leaders have been lying. That's what's really going to get us, I think.
Yeah. Of course, we're getting close to that point anyway. Even without the whole UFO question, people are just... Seriously, society is beginning to look at our government and say, what have you guys done for us lately? Anything? How long has it been since you've really done anything for the people?
Yep.
It's been a while, and more people are waking up and realizing that our government, our elected leaders who are supposed to be, of the people, by the people, for the people, are none of that.
No. It's a big farce is what it is, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. An antiquated system. The system itself was wonderful, but it's been corrupted over the years, and so many people don't look closely at it and see that it's not what we started with.
Yeah, and when things change, just a little bit at a time over a long period of time, it gets by you.
Yeah,
and
it's like that old thing about boiling the frog. You heat the water slowly, the frog doesn't realize he's being boiled.
Exactly. There you go.
We're boiling.
Well, listen, Karyn, we're just about down here to the last minute. Is there anything, last comments you'd like to make? Anything upcoming that you would like the viewers to know about? Or
well, there are a couple of really cool conferences coming up. There's one next month in Texas, right outside of Stevensville, being put on by researcher Paula Harris, and that is called the Women's UFO Symposium, which I think is pretty interesting.
Yes.
She felt that women have not really been given enough of a voice in UFO conferences in the past, and I think she's right. You go to conferences, 99 to 100% of the speakers are male.
Yep.
I always find a couple. And people always ask me on my show about women in ufology, and I'm thinking, well, why should we differentiate? There should just be researchers and people in ufology. But I see her point. She's put together a conference where the speakers are women, and it's a pretty cool thing to point out that you can do that you can come up with enough speakers who are all women.
Right. Will you be going to that, or will you be speaking at that?
I can't. I really, really wanted to, but my day job is not allowing me to do it. But I'm really hoping that I get to go to it next year. I'm planning on going to that event in 2013.
So
Really?
I take it you don't believe the world's going to end on December 21st, huh?
Well, I'm eating dessert first, just in case. All year, from now on.
There
So
you go.
it's going to be my life. And one other conference that I really want to mention, I know we're almost out of time, but the Paradigm Symposium is coming in October. And that one is also going to be pretty amazing because we've been talking a lot about ancient aliens. Giorgio Tsoukalos is going to be there. Phil Coppens is going to be there. Bill Burns. These guys have all been on Ancient Aliens. And the most exciting is that Eric von Daniken, who has not been in this country in something like 8 years, is coming over, and he's going to be there too.
Now, where is that going to be held?
That's going to be in Minneapolis in October.
Oh, okay.
And so if anybody wants more information on that one, go to www.paradigmsymposium.com. Or go to my Facebook page because I put up links to it all the time.
And that's coming up in October.
That's going to be in October.
Wow,
now, in spring, you want to go to Paola's conference in Texas, right outside Stevensville, which, of course, is famous for the huge flying Walmart UFO.
Right.
Angela Joyner, who is the journalist who broke the story on that Stevensville UFO, is going to be there. And Angela's wonderful. She's a terrific speaker, and I'm just so sorry I can't be there for that one.
Now, is it truly going to be women only? No men allowed?
No, it's not no men allowed. It's just that the speakers are women.
Oh, okay. I thought it was going to be like a women's only type of thing.
Nope. Absolutely, men and women are allowed, and certainly welcome and invited. And it's going to be fantastic. It sounds like a wonderful, wonderful event.
Great.
But Paula really just wanted to show that there are enough women who can speak on this subject, even to field an entire conference where you could have all the speakers who are women. And that's very cool. And I'm hoping that what it does is then gets other conference organizers to think about inviting a few more women to speak at their events.